How much did you buy Hypori for?
$1 million.
How much is it worth today?
Over 300. I reached out to him, the CEO. We got to talking a little bit, and I was like, look, I'd like to license your technology and try it out. And he kind of said, to be honest, I'm here to turn the lights off. The board hired me because they're pulling out. He was like, but if you really want it, you could buy it. $3 million. I don't have $3 million. And he said, well, come to Austin, Texas. Come see it. Tell me what you can afford. So I went to Austin, and I met a handful of the original developers. So I made them an offer, and they accepted, and I bought the IP, and then I hired 6 of the original developers into Intelligent Waves.
And what's the vision here?
Take it over $1 billion, change the way that people look at edge, change the way that people consider compute. In a world with AI, that's going to redefine the way a lot of this stuff is done. There is something that AI can't do. It can't have passion. It can't have passion to accomplish something, to do something that matters. That's always going to be uniquely us. Money's a side effect. When you really want to drive, money becomes not the focus. It becomes the measurement of success, not the goal.
Jared, there's a lot of debate today about whether the American dream is still alive. When you look at your own journey from a homeless teenager trying to find a way forward to building a company that's changing how governments and enterprises think about security, what would you say to the people who think the American dream has died?
I'd say you're not paying attention.
I think it's an interesting one, right? Because I grew up in the UK and I came to America in 2015, late 2015, and my life has completely changed. When I think about the opportunities that are available, and I really want to unpack that with you, but let's start from the very beginning, because you have a very unique story. And you and I spoke about this in our prep call. I spent some time really thinking about your journey. I don't want to keep anything off the table. Let's start from the very beginning. Where did it all start, and how did we get to where we are today?
That's a long story, maybe longer than this podcast. I mean, look, I was a kid that grew up in Colorado. My father was a Vietnam vet, Special Forces. I think he saw a lot of dark things in his time and deployed in Vietnam, and that led to some substance abuse and other problems, which ultimately led to my parents getting divorced when I was young. And so I spent the better part of until I was about 6th grade living with a single mom, and my mom worked her butt off trying to provide for me, right? But of course the challenge was when she was working 3 jobs to try to pay the bills, it meant I was at home alone. And so I kind of learned to be the man of the house, I guess, when I was young. And then she married my stepdad, who's my dad, to me. And him and I banged heads. He was a military officer, and he was one of those kind of guys that says, hey, dinner's at 5 o'clock. If I walked in the door at 5:01, I didn't eat. And, I think we both have a lot of regrets about how that worked out. I'm blessed enough that in my life, everything I've ever done, I've been good at. And when I was young, I made the decision I was going to be an ass. And I was a good ass. I almost ruined my parents' life. I almost ruined my own life. I got kicked out of the house by the time I was 16. My father actually, my dad had moved his desk and found bullets embedded in the wall from a drive-by due to the dumb crap I was involved in. And so, for his own safety and for my family's safety, they kicked me out. And me, I wasn't done being dumb yet. So, they set me up in my first apartment, and I think I was there for less than 30 days before I got kicked out for having parties. And, I went from one friend's house to the next friend's house until you start to wear out your welcome. And then before you knew it, I found myself living in the back of an old baby blue Lincoln behind a Sinclair gas station, and with an old Army sleeping bag. And everybody has a low point in life. I think it's important that you don't forget what that is and what it felt like, because it kind of, for at least for me, it's become my grounding for everything else I've done since.
Wow. That's the first time we've had an introduction like that to the show. This show is called Inside Silicon Valley because Silicon Valley is a special place in the world of technology, but Silicon Valley isn't just in Silicon Valley. There are founders in technology everywhere. The serendipity of Silicon Valley stretches around many corners of the world. But the reason I find this story very special is because a lot of founders build their companies in a garage, in a dorm room, with funding, being incubated in a tier one fund. And these are all amazing things, right? You get those opportunities, but very few have, I mean, none that I have come across yet have had a story like yours. You've tasted some very hard times on a personal level, a financial level. You've been to Iraq, you've been to Afghanistan, you've fought the wars and protected the country in many ways. And I think even when we think about your company today, at one point it was failing before you came in and took over. I want to start there because there are certain values and certain principles, or I guess factors in life that drive us, that remind us, or as you said, they ground us. How much of what you do today reminds you of that Lincoln, reminds you of the toughest times in your life?
None of it, yet all of it. So, nothing I do today, I resembles where the situation I put myself into. It was my fault, not anybody else's fault as a young man. But I never forget the sensation of it, the helplessness of it. Ironically, when I'm in a vehicle that, like, if you turn your car off for a little while and it gets a little humid on the inside and you can kind of like, it gets that kind of mug damp smell, that will flash me back, to those times, when I'd wake up and the windows would be fogged up and I had to get out before the sun came up, go figure out where I was going to eat or where I was going to get warm. But you never let go of that. It's kind of a form of I guess, PTSD in some ways. But at the same time, it's really important for me to hold on to that experience, because if I remember that I'm no better of a man than I was that day, then I never think I'm better than anybody. And that has become one of the tools of what I would call my superpower.
I look at your story and I think about what does it take to be successful? We use words like grit and relentlessness and drive and hunger. If you were to, I guess, point to 1, 2, or 3 of the core values that you live by every single day, what would you say those values are?
At least what differentiates me from so many other very successful, very intelligent, very capable people. I think something I have in common with all of them is passion, right? And I think to be a successful founder, you have to be more than technically competent. You have to not be driven by the desire for money. Money's a side effect, right? When you really want to drive, money becomes not the focus. It becomes the measurement of success, not the goal. It's way more about doing something that matters, that has impact. And I know we'll probably talk about it, but I started my own nonprofit, I don't know, 11 years ago or so ago. And I didn't by accident call it what I call it, right? Which is, I call it Warriors Ethos. And so I would think maybe it's my ethos of taking care of people, of being focused on mission, on impact, on outward impact, is maybe what makes me somewhat unique from other folks.
Let's go to a part of your life where you made the decision to join the army. Why did you make that choice?
Some part of me, I think, always was going to make that decision. My mom tells me that the first book I ever brought back from the school library was a Jane's Handbook on Small Arms. I could tell you the specs on a T-72 tank when I was like in 5th grade. But so in some ways, I think it was inevitable, but that was not the path I was on. And I had been in a lot of trouble, and there is even some limits of what I'm not going to say even on the podcast. But I had a wake up call, and it came in a couple of different ways, in which, and there's a long list of this, of people who came to help me when I put myself in a horrible position, or people who came to help me because they saw potential in me or opportunity in what I could be, maybe that I didn't even see in myself. And, I got arrested for stealing pork chops out of a grocery store. And the judge had told me, hey, I've seen you enough times now. It's, maybe what'll help wake you up a little bit is you need to spend a little time in jail. And I had already been thinking about it, and I had already talked to a recruiter, right? And it was a survival statement at the time. And I was like, hey, no, but if you send me to jail, then I won't be able to join the Army. And judge kind of paused, and he was like, okay, I'll give you 30 days to show me a contract. He's like, if you show me a contract that you're joining the Army, I'll drop the charges. And so that became the imperative, not necessarily the drive or the desire to join, but that became the imperative that forced me to maybe even get out of my own way and actually do something positive for my life.
Your father, your stepfather, it's a common theme, and it's service. But what are some of the important life lessons you take from being in the Army?
Oh, the Army was my foundation. It saved my life. It aligned my moral and ethical compass correctly. Mm-hmm. It taught me priorities of leadership, right? Like the idea of leaders eat last, the idea of, you are not the priority, the mission is the priority. The taking care of your people is more important than taking care of yourself. It's not that that's a good lesson. That was an expectation. That was a standard, especially when I was in the infantry, as a young infantry non-commissioned officer. That is the standard. You lead from the front, you take care of your troops, and that kind of became the ethos of my entire life. And it's what I've leveraged, and I still leverage to every day, is some of those basic fundamentals of leadership that the combat arms in the infantry will teach you are lessons that you can carry with you for the rest of your life.
Where you are today, let's talk about the company that you are building today. It's not a company you founded, right? It's a company that I guess found you, and you found it, because a lot of the lessons that you speak of, and your journey through life, and how you've gone through different stages of struggle, the company was also going through struggle. And I think it was a match made in heaven. It needed a leader like yourself. Let's talk about the company, what the company is, the problem you're solving. But I think I'd love to hear the story. I mean, you've already shared the story with me, but for our audience, of when you found the company, what stage was it at, and why you made the choice to take it on.
So it's interesting. So my first company I founded is called Intelligent Waves, and I started Intelligent Waves almost to the month 20 years ago. And I started it in Baghdad on a spreadsheet, trying to prove out that I could be the lead communications guy for an organization called JIDO, the Joint IED Defeat Organization, which was an organization that was focused on trying to disrupt IEDs that were being used against our soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we were successful. We did some really cool stuff with that. And so the company grew. And we became really good at, to quote General John Mulholland, cool tactical shit. We became good at doing IT in hard places, right? And the company was growing and had I don't know, 150, 200 employees, 10, 15 years down the road. And this is in 2017, 2016. That same General Mulholland, had come to me and said, hey, and I had already been privileged to work for some amazing people like General Petraeus and General Odierno and General Anderson and others downrange. I'd already booked at this point probably 3 years plus in Iraq and Afghanistan as a technology leader in operational stuff. And he said, hey, what I really need is I need the ability to send a group of guys into a place they're not supposed to be with nothing. And they still have to be able to communicate. And you can't get them arrested, dragged into the street, and shot and killed. I was like, oh, that's a hard problem. Let me think about that. And so we and my team at Intelligent Waves and we looked at that problem, and we kind of broke it down fundamentally into three things. No data in transit, no data at rest, and network obfuscation. And so network obfuscation was the first thing that we attacked, and we actually created a product called GrayPath out of Intelligent Waves, which was, essentially hid what you do on a network. And then no data in transit, no data at rest piece, one of my guys came to me and said, hey, I found this little company called Hypori. And I was like, oh, really? Yeah. So I think they might be able to do a piece of this. Like let's talk to him. So I reached out to him. I ended up talking to the CEO. He was not the founding CEO. He was the replaced CEO by the board. The board had released the founding CEO. And we got to talking a little bit, and I was like, look, I'd like to license your technology and try it out. And he kind of said, to be honest, I'm here to turn the lights off. He's like, the board hired me because they're pulling out. We're going to take these assets and liquidate them. And it just didn't work, right? We spent a whole lot of money and we didn't get anywhere. And I was like, okay. And he was like, well, if you really want it, you could buy it. And I said, well, how much? And he said, well, $3 million. I don't have $3 million, to buy something that may or may not work, or, I don't have that kind of money. And he said, well, come to Austin, Texas, come see it. Tell me what you can afford. It's like, okay. So I went to Austin and I met a handful of the original developers, and I got to look at the IP. I think it was 12 patents at the time. I was like, screw it. So I made them an offer and they accepted, and I bought the IP, and then I hired 6 of the original developers into Intelligent Waves. And by the way, all five of the 6, and actually one of the previous original developers is actually still work with me now and are on the team now. And we solved that problem for SOCOM at the time, in that hard denied space, right? But that kind of a mission is like this big, like it's tiny. But then my realization, my first of several epiphanies, was, wait a second. So we just took a known compromised phone on a known compromised network and made it so that you could securely communicate with an enterprise with no risk to the enterprise. And the side effect that, I kind of wish we had said that we developed it this way on purpose, but it was really kind of a side effect, was because we already assume your phone is compromised, it means I don't want to know what's on your phone, which means you get to keep all your privacy. And I was like, wow, secure access to an enterprise, full user privacy. This has got to be way bigger. And that's what led me to make the decision that and the learning lesson from running an IT services company with a couple hundred employees at the time, that when you have a product and you have a services company, the two of them try to kill each other. Because a product company lives off of spending overhead money, right? It's development. It's, you're doing all the things associated with building a product. A services company lives off of having as low of an overhead as possible so they can deliver the lowest cost service possible to the edge. And so the two of them just bang heads, fundamentally. And I realized that if I didn't separate Hypori out from Intelligent Waves, I was going to kill them both. And because I saw what I think Hypori could be, I made the decision to separate it out. And I hired a CEO to run Intelligent Waves for me, and I spun Hypori out of Intelligent Waves.
This is really fascinating. So you don't have to answer this question, but I have to ask because I'm a podcast host. So I'm going to ask, how much did you buy Hypori for?
$1 million.
And how much is it worth today?
Over 300.
And what about Intelligent Waves? Have you sold it? Are you still a part owner? What's the situation there?
I'm still technically the full owner.
Okay.
I sometimes kick myself. I've never taken anything off the table. As in I've never sold one of my companies, right? And I talked to a lot of other serial entrepreneurs who they've learned how to do that. Like formula, build a company, bring it to a certain size, sell it, repeat, do it again, right? And I never really did that because I love what we do. And so I just kept building. I may rectify that here soon, because I would like to simplify my focus some.
When you went to Austin, Texas, this was a failing company. This was a company that they hired somebody to come in and turn the lights off and liquidate the entire business. How many people, you said there was 6, or how many people?
I think there was 9 or 10 total employees left at the time, and they hadn't been told that they only had about 10 days left. And I made offers to 6 of them, and they all came over.
And the technology that you purchased and used it in real missions, right? What was the impact of those?
I mean, so my first set of customers are sensitive customers.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's the idea of critical communications in what's called contested space. So the idea of going into a place where you know that there's an enemy looking for you and being able to securely communicate, not only protecting you and your team, but also protecting the data that you're sharing or accessing, right, is an important thing. And it's something we still pride ourselves in being able to do for unique customers. But the scope and scale is just so much bigger than that.
Was there any high-profile missions that this technology was used in?
If there was, I wouldn't be able to tell you about it.
Love it. So $1 million, a $300 million business today. How many people work for the company?
A little over 100.
Mm-hmm. And what's the vision here?
Take it over $1 billion. Change the way that people look at edge. Change the way that people consider compute.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, look, it's a virtual phone, right? So it's a virtual operating system accessible from a phone or a tablet or a PC or whatever, right? And the habit that we've built with this thing, with the phone, is like, it's become the most important thing you have. I mean, how many times have you walked out of your house without your wallet?
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you walked out of your house without your phone?
I love
Right?
that.
I mean, it's trust me, people are like, oh, screw it, I left my wallet. I can use my phone. I can't use my wallet for my phone though. Right? So it's become this principal thing that we live off of. And let's go beyond the enterprise value, right? Like of okay, secure places like government, which now we're the largest BYOD vendor in the Department of War. What about banking? What about healthcare? Secure data for banking transactions, M&A, legal transactions, litigation, healthcare, HIPAA data sampling. So like all this stuff that's all regulated data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, this makes sense. But then, like, all right, let's pull it back and make it even bigger. From a TAM standpoint, right? A vision, which is what I think you have to have as a founder, is true vision. I can make a faster PC than you can buy at Best Buy by simply allocating resources in cloud. If I demoed you Hypori today and I did a bandwidth test and I'm on 3 bars of 5G, I'm gonna say, how much bandwidth do you think I can get? And you're gonna guess, 30 megs, 40 megs, 50 megs, whatever you're gonna guess, it's gonna be wrong. I'm gonna pull 4 gigs of bandwidth over my phone. And that's faster than anything this form factor can do. Well, why? Because it's not really here. It's just streaming pixels to the edge. The actual operating system runs in a data center in the cloud. So now think if you could apply that to every edge device. What if I could give you a faster PC than you could buy from Best Buy, that you could launch from an app on your TV, on your 80-inch TV on the wall? All you need is a keyboard and mouse, and I could do it for less than $15 a month.
And there was a story you shared with me, right? With your wife, I believe, right?
I was literally about to tell a story, yeah. So, or as one of my great epiphanies I've had was my wife, who just casually one day stopped me and said, "Hey, when can I have Hypori?" And I was like, of course, we're in the depth of doing like hard military stuff at the time, and I'm like, well, why in the world would you want Hypori? And she's like, well, it's a phone, right? I'm like, well, yeah, kinda. She's like, so if I lose this thing, I don't lose anything, right? I'm like, yeah. She's like, cool. So why can't I bring the big one with the cameras to the kids' events and take pictures? And then bring a little flippy one with me when I go out with my girlfriends to dinner. She's like, why can't I change my phone out the way I change my purse out? And I was like, oh, this is going to be huge. The potential of this is massive.
This is exactly why I wanted you to tell the full story, not just taking moments of it and focusing on the technology, but you see some things when I look back at your entire career, but also your life, it's very unique. And a lot of people have unique stories until they tell the story.
Hopefully
right?
everybody does.
Yeah, exactly. But I really love yours. It's all about hardship and success and hard work, seeing the opportunity, retaining equity in something that you believe in, saving a company and seeing a bigger picture, turning that around. With everything that you've seen happen in business and in life, what are the biggest lessons that you can tell a founder today? Somebody who's sitting there in their 20s or in their 30s and just lost all faith in what they can do, or maybe they have a startup that has plateaued, or a company that seems to be just a day job now. What would you say to them? Maybe that person's your son.
I mean, with everything happening in the world, my wife and I have a game where if I say the word AI, she has to take a shot. So she ends up drunk most of the time. But in a world with AI, right, that's going to redefine the way a lot of this stuff is done. There is something that AI can't do. It can't have passion. It can't have passion to accomplish something, to do something that matters, right? And that's always going to be uniquely us. To have vision and then with that vision have passion to see that vision realized, right? And so that's on the founder side. I think to be successful, one of the things, you know, when we talk about that passion, we talk about what it takes to be a billionaire, to make a billionaire. There's some great folks out there who've talked about it, and like, you know, money is never the focus. Objective is the focus. Outcome is the focus. Impact is the focus. And the how, in my opinion, can be solved by, you know, I used to believe I am where I am today because I had a handful of very, very unique mentors that I'm just absolutely blessed I was able to be mentored by these folks, right? These were these really high profile names. I could name them and you probably know who they are. And I don't know how the hell I ended up with them and why in the world they saw opportunity in me, but I've also evolved my opinion on that, in that the most important thing you can do at whatever stage you're in life or in business is be receptive to mentorship, to everybody. I get people a lot who go, hey, you know, you're so successful because you work so hard. I'm like, no, I'm successful because I'm lucky. And everybody goes, no, you earned this. You worked hard. I mean, a janitor works hard, right? And maybe harder than me. That doesn't make you successful, right? But if you're willing to look at that janitor and realize that you're not better than that guy, and I bet you 20 years of that guy being a janitor, he's got some lessons he could teach you. And if you could be receptive to learn from anybody, then you are a freaking inveritable sponge of potential. And you could be more. And then it's taking that potential and then applying focus to it for a very specific outcome.
You said something about your stepfather. You said a minute after 5 and you're not eating. That discipline, I find solace in that. I listen to that, and I know that sounds super harsh and horrible, especially for a young lad, but that discipline, that there are lessons there. And the reason I was trying to index on the army piece and what we learn, or I mean, I haven't been, but what you learned being in the army, there's a discipline in that. My father used to say that to my brothers, is they have to be at home by 6. And he was very firm on it. There was an element of, I don't want you on the streets. I want you at home. You have to be at the dinner table. You eat with the family. How much of that do you keep with part of how you run your business, your businesses? How often do you find yourself standing in front of your team, and whether it's motivating them or driving them, is that a common theme in your organizations?
So I'm not as hardcore about the leather of discipline, right? When I mean like the strictness of discipline. But on the other side of the house, I am very hardcore on the idea of taking responsibility, right? So you can choose to be on time or late. You can choose to be fast or slow. You can choose to do more or do less, but you're accountable for it. Whatever the outcome is yours.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you can't blame anybody else for that outcome.
Uh-huh.
Right? And sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to take ownership of not just the things you did well, but maybe it's the things you didn't do well, and to embrace them and embrace them publicly, embrace them in front of others, embrace them in front of your team, and take responsibility. And I think when people do that, I think people will want to follow you because they can trust that you're going to be reliable, right? You may not always be perfect, which I think that's a false expectation.
Mm-hmm.
But they know that you can be trusted.
Jared, this has been one hell of an episode. I really, truly, thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was looking forward to it all week. So I'm glad that we were able to find the time to make it happen. And I wish we had more time to speak about a lot more. And I'm sure, if you don't mind, one day we can do this in person and double click on.
Love it.
Thank you, Jared. We finish every episode with a book recommendation, and I'm definitely keen to hear what your book recommendation is.
So 2, I guess. If you're thinking about starting a company and you're watching this because you're trying to figure out, do I want to go and do this? than Founder versus Investor, right? Go read Founder versus Investor. It will give you a great idea of what it is when you build something. And if you build it successfully, more than likely, somewhere along the line, you're going to have to take money. You're going to have to take money from an investor of some kind. And you better know what that means when you're doing that. And that's a great book that literally is written by two different people, an investor and a founder. And they give you these, each chapter is builder's perspective, founder's perspective, investor's perspective. And sometimes they're opposing perspectives. And if you're going to be a founder, you should understand those. Then the other one would be Build by Tony Fadell. There's some really cool ideas in there about how you lead and how you focus on teams and how you build something unique. And so I'd say, I guess there's a bunch I could say, but those are two I would recommend.
I love it. I'm definitely going to get the both, but the first one sounds really intriguing. I haven't come across it. Jared, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time, for being on Inside the Silicon Mind. This has been one hell of an interesting story, and I really enjoyed it. I think ultimately the way I would summarize it, in my opinion, is I feel quite privileged to do this because I've said it many times. I should pay tuition to sit here and ask these questions, but I get to learn so much walking away from these, and you've definitely sparked a huge amount of curiosity in how does somebody go through such a tough time but still come out and build something amazing, see opportunities in something and build it again.
Building, being that sponge, right? Being that recipient of, then it's like, what do you do with it? It's amazing because I want to sit and listen to your episodes because I want to hear from some of these other folks, because I am sure that there are people who have experience that I could learn from.
Absolutely. This is, we called it Inside Silicon Mind because we want to get into the mind of the guest. The reason we asked for a book recommendation, because it's all about learning. And as you said, it's being a sponge. It's learning and developing and pushing the barriers forward. Jared, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Inside the Silicon Mind. This podcast is powered by Harrison Clark. For more episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. As always, stay curious, stay consistent, and stay inside the Silicon Mind.